The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with the usual pre-session chatter, a cacophony of clicks, whistles, and translated standard that echoed off the crystalline walls. Ambassador Julia Chen stood near the observation window, watching the swirl of purple nebulae outside, her fingers absently touching the pendant that hung at her throat. It was a simple thing, really. A rough-cut stone the color of smoke and fire, wrapped in twisted copper wire that Oscar had fashioned himself during their academy days. Nothing fancy, nothing expensive, just a gift from her oldest friend before they'd gone their separate ways in the diplomatic corps. Ambassador Chen, the voice behind her was smooth, almost melodious, with the characteristic harmonic undertones of the Valkyrie species. Julia turned to face Diplomat Kreshner, one of the Council's most senior members. His iridescent scales caught the nebula's light, shifting from deep violet to silver. Diplomat Kreshner, Julia acknowledged with a slight bow, the human gesture of respect she'd maintained despite decades of galactic service. I trust the preliminary negotiations are proceeding well. But Kreshner wasn't looking at her face. His three eyes, to forward-facing, one atop his elongated skull, were fixed on her necklace. The color drained from his scales, fading to an alarming gray-white that Julia had never seen in any Valkyrie before. "Where did you get that necklace?" His voice had lost its melodious quality, becoming sharp, almost accusatory. Julia's hand instinctively moved to the pendant. Around them, other diplomats began to notice the exchange, conversations dying away as Kreshner's pale coloring drew attention. It was a gift from a friend. Oscar made it for me when we were made it," Kreshner interrupted, his voice rising. Several other alien diplomats began backing away, their own expressions registering various forms of shock and fear. "You're telling me a human made that?" Julia frowned, confused by the reaction. "Yes, Oscar found the stone on Mars during our training exercises in the Valles. He wrapped it himself. It's just copper wire and just." A Threxian delegate's translator crackled with what might have been hysterical laughter. "Ambassador, do you have any idea what that stone is?" The chamber had gone completely silent now. Even the usual hum of the translation systems seemed muted, as if the technology itself was holding its breath. Julia looked down at the pendant she'd worn for 30 years, the one that had survived 3 tours on hostile worlds, to ship accidents, and countless diplomatic functions. "It's a rock." Oscar said it was probably some kind of volcanic glass. Kreshner's scales had gone from pale to completely transparent, revealing the blue-tinted flesh beneath a Valkyrie fear response Julia had only read about in xenobiology texts. "That," he said slowly, "is what you call—" "Let me check the translation." "Ah yes, chaos, matter. It's formed in the hearts of dying stars during their final collapse. The radiation alone should have killed anyone within 1,000 meters of it. The gravitational distortions it creates should have torn apart anything trying to handle it." Julia felt the blood drain from her own face now, but Oscar just picked it up. He said it was warm to the touch, but warm. As Etherian ambassador's tentacles coiled tightly against its body, another fear response. Ambassador Chen Varash typically burns at temperatures exceeding 3,000 degrees. It can only be contained using level 7 containment fields and manipulated by AI-controlled drones. Even then, we've lost entire research stations to its instability. "Your friend," Kreshner continued, his voice barely a whisper, "touched it with his bare hands." Julia nodded slowly, memories flooding back. Oscar laughing as he showed her the stone, still warm from Mars's cold soil. Him sitting in their dorm room for hours, patiently wrapping the copper wire around it, cursing when the wire kept breaking from the heat. Him clasping it around her neck, grinning at his handiwork. "He worked with it for days," she said softly. "Shaped it, wrapped it. He burned his fingers a few times on the copper, complained about it. But the stone itself, he said it felt nice, like holding a mug of coffee." The chamber erupted. Diplomats from a dozen species began speaking at once, their translators creating a wall of overlapping sound. Julia caught fragments. "Impossible, human durability. We've been underestimating quarantine protocols." Kreshner held up a hand, calling for silence. His scales were slowly regaining some color, though they trembled visibly. "Ambassador Chen," he said carefully, "humans have been part of the Galactic Council for 70 years. In that time, you've impressed us with your adaptability, your innovation, your persistence. But this," he gestured at the necklace. "Do you understand what this means?" Julia looked around the chamber at the sea of shocked, frightened faces. She thought about Oscar, now an ambassador on the frontier stations, probably wearing his own collection of interesting rocks he'd picked up over the years. She thought about humanity's reputation in the galaxy, newcomers, primitives, the species that had somehow stumbled into space travel through sheer stubborn determination. It means, she said slowly, a strange smile forming, that maybe you've been using the wrong kind of containment fields. Kreshner stared at her for a long moment. Then, despite everything, he began to laugh, a sound like wind chimes in a storm. Wrong containment fields, he repeated. Yes, yes. I suppose when you're naturally resistant to things that would kill most species, you don't need containment fields. You just pick them up and make jewelry. Julia touched the pendant again, feeling its familiar warmth. 30 years she'd worn death itself around her neck, a gift from a friend, a reminder of home, and she'd never even known. Diplomat Kreshner, she said, meeting his eyes. I think we need to revisit some assumptions about human tolerances in our safety protocols. His scales flushed a deep, resigned purple. I think, Ambassador Chen, we need to revisit a great many assumptions about humans in general. Outside the window, the nebula swirled on, indifferent to the revelation that was about to reshape galactic understanding of humanity. Inside, Julia Chen smiled and tucked her necklace back under her collar, already composing the message she'd send to Oscar. He was going to love this.